In today's video, I'm going to show you a few common issues or locations that could cause your Midea washing machine not to spin the clothes out properly. Either the machine will not do it at all, or it does a very poor job. This guide will work for some of the sub-brands that are actually Midea washing machines, such as Criterion, Frigidaire, and Insignia, by the way. There are going to be small variants between those three models though. Note that I have other videos on this machine that relate to this issue, such as the E3 code and the FD lid lock error code, and then also the E4 out of balance code. It's possible that you could get the E5 code that would cause this potentially, that will go into the video. The very first thing that you'd want to do that is free and easy is to make sure that the machine is level on the floor. Use a bubble leveler to ensure that the machine is level. You can fix this by turning the feet underneath the washing machine with a wrench or potentially your hands. Make sure that the washing machine is in an area that is not super soft or compromised. That would be a poor area for the machine to rest on. Next, let's look at the impact switch if it could have gone bad, causing an E5 code. You're going to need to access the control top at the rear. At this point though, you want to make sure the machine is off and unplugged. To test the switch, you're going to need a multimeter and a Phillips head screwdriver for this. To remove the top cover, you need to remove 3 screws from these places, one on the right, one on the left, and one in the middle between the valves. Once you have all 3 of these screws off, you can roll the washer console top forward to inspect the impact switch. The impact switch on this model is on the right side. There are 2 Phillips head screws that hold it in place. You need to remove these and then take the switch out to inspect it. Once it's out, inspect it physically to ensure that the switch can pivot properly. To test, you'll need to remove the wires with a pair of needle nose pliers, and then once you have the wires removed, take your multimeter and set it to ohms resistance. To test the switch, put the leads of the multimeter on the prongs of the switch and then press the switch in. As you push the switch in, the meter should change from OL to a very low ohm value or vice versa and make a beeping noise. If it does, the impact switch is good. If it doesn't have this shift, then it's bad and needs replaced, and I'll have a link to the switches by the way. I'll go ahead and put it back into place. As a note, this switch has a label on it for voltage. In extremely rare cases, the incoming voltage could be bad, and you would need to test the wire harness with DC voltage as per the label on the switch, but this could vary by model to model. To replace it, simply slot it back in and install the 2 screws. One thing you could look for at this point, which you can't see on camera, is the tub and where the switch is being placed. It should not be pressed against the tub by default, the switch. If it got jammed into place because the tub is in a weird position, it could have caused the issues with the E5 code and caused the unit not to spin properly as well. With that step done, roll the console back into place. There are small tabs to pivot and lock the console top in before you reinstall the 3 screws, and they're pretty easy to see. Another possibility of the machine is twofold. The spin basket or wash plate could have issues, causing it either to bounce around and cause issues, or the wash plate threading could be stripped or damaged in a way that throws the clothes to the side of the machine before it can actually spin. It's unlikely, but it's also easy to check. This would be seen by moving the tub to the sides potentially for wobble or play. To inspect or remove the wash plate and the basket, there is a small cover that can be removed with a very thin, flat-bladed screwdriver in the middle. On the agitator models, there would be a bolt that needs removed with a 10mm deep well socket in most cases. The bolt on this particular model had a Phillips head screw on it that we just removed with a screwdriver. Once we had the bolt out, I tried to remove the plate with a few items that didn't work too well initially. And the best thing that I found to remove the wash plate was a trampoline spring tool. There are 2 small areas under the wash plate cap that allowed me to press the tool in and pull the plate up and out. If that didn't work, you could use something that would remove buildup underneath, like a fresh citric acid or our company's Wash Bomb washing machine cleaner. You could fill the tub with hot water from the hose or use the diagnostic command that I show in the other video, and then force the machine to agitate without running a load of clothes in it to make sure that the washing machine drain pump doesn't drain the cleaning water out of it. You would let it agitate for 5-10 minutes without the bolt in, and then it should get the plate to be much more easily removed. With the plate off, you can inspect the bolts underneath and the housing of the wash plate for damage that could cause any sort of issues with the tub, resulting in it going off balance or causing other issues. If you found that this was the issue where the tub was not tight, you could tighten the screws in place, and if needed, you'd want to do this with a 10mm screwdriver or socket wrench. In my opinion, if you wanted to make sure that they don't come out ever again, you can remove each of the bolts and put some blue thread locker on them and then tighten them back into place. As noted about the plate, if it got damaged or stripped out, you would have to replace it. This one was fine, but check the underside of the plate before you reinstall the screw into it and make sure everything's fine. Once the bolt is secured back in place, go ahead and reinstall the cap to the unit, and all the steps on this side are now done. One caution when getting underneath the machine for some more fixes is the drain hose for the water, as this washer hose wasn't long enough to allow me to keep in the drain pipe when I move the machine. It needs either elevated or drained out entirely to get to the bottom of the machine. The last steps involve getting to the underside of the unit by having the machine entirely tilted to 90 degrees side to access the bottom and then the back plate of the machine. You would tape the lid of the washing machine top to keep it in place, or you'd just be really careful when you let the machine to rest on the floor. Under the unit, look for anything that could have obstructed or degraded the belt system running at full speed, although the chances are that would affect the agitation as well. If you wanted a better look at the transmission and clutch system, there are going to be 4 screws that hold on the cover plate in place. Next, we have the shift actuator. There's a small wire on it that goes to the transmission. If it was accidentally moved or put out of place, you could reattach it. Also, make sure that the plastic arm of the clutch can move freely to ensure that the transmission can actually engage the spin system. To remove the actuator for testing and replacement, you need to use the 10mm socket wrench or the Phillips head screwdriver and remove the 2 screws that hold the shifter in place. Once you remove the screws, the wire assembly will snake into a bag of wires that hold this in place. To access the bag easily, you'd have to remove the screws from the back of the washing machine. Again, you could do it from underneath, but it's not easy to show on camera. You can reach for the wires where they go from the shift actuator into the bag, and it works the same way with the pump for the wires. This bag of wires holds all of the ones that are in the machine, and the wires go from this bag to the PCB. You would have to trace the shifter wire and remove it from this cluster because the color of the wires are terrible on these, and it could vary from model to model. You may have to remove cable ties in the process of taking these wires out. And also be very careful with the wires when you remove them. You will need to retie all the wires once you've tested or replaced them to make sure they don't move and jostle around. This is how and where I removed the shift wire harness from the wire cluster. It's not intuitive and it's really poorly built on this machine. This would let you, once removed, to test the actuator with a multimeter. I'm just showing you how to do this for reference. To test the actuator to see if it's defective, set your multimeter to ohms resistance. And if it isn't auto-ranging, it would need to be in the 200 to 2000 ohm range. Press the leads into the wire harness and test for ohms. You should get about 1500 ohms plus or minus 10%. If it's much outside of that range, the shift actuator is bad and you'll need to replace it. I'll have a link to it in the description of the video. Now, if the shift actuator is bad and you're replacing it, simply attach it back into the wire cluster of the machine and reroute it where the actuator was in the first place. Be careful with the wires and wire cluster. I've had wires break due to inspecting these parts on the machine, and it caused a big issue. Once you have everything routed, retie and reassemble the bag with the wires in place. It should get mounted on the side of the machine with a metal wire tie. To reattach the actuator, slide the wire retainer into the transmission shifter, then orient the actuator into the correct hole position, then reinstall the 2 10mm screws. The shift arm shouldn't need to be pulled back to get this to attach. There should not be a lot of resistance on the arm or arm cable if the unit is on agitation. If it was theoretically in spin, it may be more difficult. From here, you would put the back of the washer on and you should have the machine back theoretically in working order. If none of these things worked though, the last steps would be that the PCB unit itself is bad and needs replaced. A wire could have been damaged somewhere in the system. It should have been addressed when we had everything else apart, although that is quite unlikely. These are all the primary steps I would take for this specific kind of Midea washing machine. But if it is spinning and not spin drying your clothes fully, it could be a further out of balance issue or an E4 code. I'm going to have a video soon on how to replace or refurbish the rods as well, as that's going to be kind of a different video for a different set of problems. And I hope this video helped you. Make sure to watch all the ones that are in this playlist that should be showing up on the screen for more Midea washing machine help. Have a great day.